Welcome everybody to the Libertas Press YouTube channel, and this is our News for the Day segment. Here we are reporting the truth and common sense opinion. Today is November 28th, 2017, and those are the stories that we will be bringing you today. Any of these stories we get from Google News, and it's very easy. You just basically, we have a link in our description, and you can check out any of the stories, and we read certain ones that we think will be interesting to you. So here we go. Let's see, Google News, top stories. North Korea fires missile that shows it can hit everywhere in the world, CNN. President Trump speaks on North Korea, live updates. North Korea launches highest ever ballistic missile, BBC News. Oh, and the other one about Trump speaks on North Korea, CBS News. North Korea fires ballistic missile, reports South. I assume that's South Korea. That's from Value Walk, never heard of them. North Korea, whatever plans the U.S. has to rein in Kim's nuclear ambitions, it isn't working. Opinion from ABC News Online. Let's see, GOP tax bill takes a big step forward with committee vote, New York Times. Related coverage, the House and the Senate tax bills explained by fact check by PolitiFact, which I sometimes call PolitiFake. So I don't think you can always trust them, the organization behind them. Most of these fact check websites are run by biased groups. They can't always necessarily trust them. GOP gains momentum on tax cuts, The Hill. CT nonprofits fear GOP tax overhaul will reduce charitable giving. That's featured on the CT Mirror. Not sure who they are. See, what's one more bad thing in the GOP tax bill? Ask the polar bears. Opinion from the Washington Post. I'm sure they're going to talk about how the GOP tax bill will cause a global warming meltdown and all the polar bears will die. And so will we. Anyway, watch live Senate Budget Committee Tax Plan Reconciliation Hearing, PBS NewsHour. Moving on, even before court victory, Trump's pick to lead the consumer watchdog began reshaping the agency, Washington Post. For those of you who don't know about this story, this is about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I believe it's unneeded. I believe it's also not in the Constitution. And the guy that Trump picked is against it, which he does a lot of, which I think is kind of funny. I'm not a big Trump fan. I think it's kind of funny when he picks someone who generally is against the agency to run the agency. Well, what happened was the person running the agency was an Obama pick, and they resigned because they refused to work for Trump, even though I guess they've been working for Trump so far. And basically there was a rule that said they could appoint their own successor. So he appointed someone that him and Obama would like. And Trump picked another rule that allowed him to do it. So he sent his guy in. The Obama guy didn't go in, but the Obama guy is suing. And so these things are talking about how that's shaping up. The related coverage says judge okays Trump's CFPB pick, Russia Today, RT. Temporary restraining order to stop Trump's pick for CFPB is denied. Fox News reports that. So I guess it's not going so good for the Obama guy. Excuse me. Showdown at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Opinion, USA Today. And you can read all these stories, like I said, in your spare time. There's a link in the description below. Let's see. CNN will boycott White House Christmas party, Politico reports, USA Today. Related coverage, CNN to boycott White House Christmas party, highly cited from Politico, which the USA Today story is reporting on the Politico story. CNN will not attend White House Christmas press party because Donald Trump lives there. That's from Deadline. Let's see. Never heard of them. Melania Trump's little tree of illiteracy, opinion by the Toronto Star. Trump vowed to end the war on Christmas. Here's how the White House is decorated this season. In depth from the Salt Lake Tribune. On to the sexual harassment and those types of scandals. Congressional Black Caucus members try to get Democrat Conyers to resign, the Hill reports. Related coverage, several Black Caucus members in talks with Conyers to get him to resign, highly cited on CNN. Second ex-staffer accuses Conyers of sexual harassment, highly cited in the Detroit News. Last but not least, Lindsey Graham. You've got to understand why Republicans don't trust CNN. That sounds interesting. I'll read that more in full. That's from the Washington Examiner. Related coverage, Donald J. Trump on Twitter. At Fox News is much more important in the United States than CNN, but outside of and it goes on, I can't really read it. So I'll go ahead and check that out too. Let's see. Graham, which is Lindsey Graham. U.S. headed to war if things don't change with North Korea. Politico. People for sale, where lives are auctioned at 400, highly cited by CNN. Maybe I'll open that one too. And then I thought this was interesting. I don't normally do the world stories, but I noticed this says Saudi Arabia releases senior prince arrested in anti-corruption purge. That's from the New York Times. Related coverage, Sahura to discuss recommendation for women to hold leadership positions in Saudi missions abroad. I also, that's from Arab News. I also heard that Saudi Arabia has finally allowed women to get driver's licenses. I thought they could drive. I just thought they couldn't do other things, but I guess they can't drive there. All right, let's go ahead and look at the stories. More from CNN. Here we go. North Korea fires missile that shows it can hit everywhere in the world, by several CNN reporters. Washington, CNN, North Korea issued a direct challenge to President Donald Trump with the launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM, that Defense Secretary James Mattis said demonstrates it has the ability to hit everywhere in the world. Pyongyang launched a Hwasong-14 missile in the early hours of Wednesday morning local time that flew higher and demonstrated a longer range than any of its previous tests. It was the first missile fired in almost 2 months and came despite Trump's repeated warnings, delivered again during this trip to South Korea earlier this month in a direct message to North Korea, do not try us. The missile launched Wednesday spent around 53 minutes in the air, reaching a height of up to 4,500 kilometers or 2,800 miles before splashing down in waters around 210 kilometers or 130 miles west of Japan's Omari prefecture, according to authorities in Japan and South Korea. Hours after the launch, Trump sounded more restrained, telling reporters Tuesday at the White House that the U.S. will handle the situation. We will take care of it, the president said, adding later that North Korea is a situation we will handle. Let's see, Mattis, who was with Trump in the Roosevelt Room of the White House, outlined how much tougher that situation has become. The test missile, he said, went higher, frankly, than any previous shot they have taken, and demonstrates that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un now has the ability to hit everywhere in the world, basically. The bottom line is it is a continued effort to build a threat, a ballistic missile threat that endangers world peace, regional peace, and certainly the United States, Mattis concluded. You can read the rest of that yourself, but basically, the thing is, Trump was like telling Obama all the time, hey, man, you're not crossing the line. I mean, you're letting them cross the line. You put a line, and then you let them cross it. You put a line, you let them cross it. You put a line, you let them cross it. Well, Trump, it seems so far to be doing the same thing. Maybe it's because the office of the presidency, now he realizes you can't always just do whatever you want. But you should, if we shouldn't have engaged them at all. They didn't start this until Trump told them no. And that's how groups like this are. Once you tell them no, they're defiant, and they're going to keep going, 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 and they're going to keep going. So basically, you don't want to, I mean, just, it's none of our business unless we can see that they're, they say, hey, we're going to launch, and then they launch, then we can just take them out. I'm telling you, we can take them out. We're causing this to be a big stir. Let's see. President Trump speaks on tax plan live updates. Let's see if there are any other stories. These are some of the North Korean stories, I believe. No. These are related to the Lindsey Graham. Hold on. Let's see. Okay, let's go ahead with the live Trump updates on the tax plan. That was one of the big stories. There we go. Read the GOP one first. GOP tax bill takes a big step forward with committee vote. Senate took a big step forward when the Budget Committee voted to pass the Republicans' $1.5 trillion tax package, clearing the way for the full Senate to vote on the bill later this week. After a day of deal-making, several senators who are on the fence now seem more receptive to voting for the bill. Some hurdles still exist, including aligning the Senate version with the House bill and ensuring that the changes that some senators want don't rankle other lawmakers. On Wednesday, the full Senate will vote on whether to proceed with the consideration of the bill. The advancement of the bill came a day after a day of partisan sparring in which Congress's two top Democrats, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, pulled out a White House meeting after President Trump attacked them in a tweet, of course. Yeah, he kind of provokes a lot of stuff too. I mean, I'm sure they would have gotten up there and done their stupid stuff anyway. Anything they want done to the bill, typically with Democrats, isn't that good. The Republicans say they want the good stuff, but so far they're doing Democrat or Democrat light stuff. I don't even want to put it that way. I just say liberals. They're just liberals. They're all liberals. All sides, just about. You got a few conservatives, maybe libertarians, and a couple of the senators and a couple of the congressmen. That's about it. When I say conservatives, I don't mean the social conservatives. I mean the ones that really want to cut. A lot of these guys don't want to cut crap. They just want spending for their crap, and they want to fund the war machine. Because all of the military-industrial complex corporations, they want money. And they don't make money when we're not at war. So anyway, back to the story. Chances the bill will pass the full Senate strengthened considerably. A flurry of last-minute deal-making helped garner the support. That's always bad news, deal-making. A few Republican lawmakers who had expressed concerns about the $1.5 trillion package, including its treatment of small business and its effect on the deficit. The rapid turnaround underlines the pressure Republicans face to pass a tax cut and notch a significant legislative victory in their first year controlling both Congress and the White House. To help push the effort forward, President Trump visited Capitol Hill for a lunch meeting with Republican senators where he made promises to some and admonished others. I think we're going to get it passed, Mr. Trump said at the White House later in the day. It's going to have lots of adjustments before it ends, but the end result will be a very, very massive, the largest in our history of our country tax cut. Yeah, Trump always says everything's going to be the biggest and the best ever. I need to really read into this more, but so far it's mostly been pork and tricks and switching bait, and we'll give them a tax break here, but we'll take this, which allows some maybe to get a tax break, but the majority of them, when you give them one thing but take another, it basically doesn't give them a tax break. This really is not what Trump or the Republicans promised about an overhaul reform. This is not. I mean, there might be some good stuff in it. It's better than nothing. But anyway, Republicans emerged from the lunch increasingly optimistic about the bill's fate and played down the concerns that it threatened to bedevil its passage. Three key Republican holdouts, Senator Susan Collins of Maine, Bob Corker of Tennessee, and Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, sounded positive about the bill on Tuesday after gaining assurances from Trump and Republican leaders that those worries would be addressed. The bill passed the Senate Budget Committee on a strict party line vote. So anyway, I'll read a little more. Among those who voted the bill out of committee were Mr. Johnson and Mr. Corker, both of whom had said on Monday that they would oppose the legislation without changes to address their individual concerns. Mr. Johnson wants more favorable treatment for pass-through businesses, and Mr. Corker wants assurances the $1.5 trillion tax bill won't add to the deficit. Now, that's kind of a scam right there, the 1.5 tax bill adding to the deficit. Well, of course it's going to add to the deficit if you don't cut. You guys need to cut. You guys don't want to cut. You guys are big government Republicans. You don't want to cut. No cuts. So, of course, basically, if there are no cuts to give the taxes back, then you have to add it onto the debt. It's like saying, all right, I'm going to give a bunch of people who, paid into the I don't know, the lunch money fund at work, and I'm going to go ahead and give them all a cut on their money because the lunch money fund's becoming too expensive. So I don't really have the money because I haven't cut other places. So I'm going to go ahead and just, and all the lunch money's being spent on the lunch, and we haven't made the lunches cheaper. We haven't, taken, we haven't, cut somewhere else so we could take the money out of that and put it in the lunch fund. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're just going to put it on a credit card. That's basically what they're doing. Put it on a credit card. Anyway, but the meeting with Trump and discussions with Republican leaders seem to have swayed them enough to vote to advance the plan. Let's see. Trump. President Trump addressed reporters Tuesday afternoon regarding the Senate's tax overhaul plans and a recent provocation from North Korea. Earlier Tuesday, Mr. Trump met with GOP leadership to discuss the Senate's upcoming bill. And of course, this is President Trump speaks on tax plans. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican Kentucky, hinted that he's struggling to get all 52 Senate Republicans on board with the plan following his behind closed doors meeting with Mr. Trump on Capitol Hill. It's a challenging exercise, he said, about trying to appeal to GOP members who still have concerns on the legislation. Think of sitting there with a Rubik's Cube trying to get to 50 votes. The Senate Budget Committee voted Tuesday afternoon to advance the tax bill as Republican leaders pushed to bring the legislation to the floor for a vote a week later. Mattis updates North Korea. Secretary of Defense Mattis updated on North Korea. We pretty much read that. He says that, they can hit anywhere in the world, danger to the world. Trump pushes for tax cuts, even though they're like mediocre, because he's not really a conservative, so he doesn't really care about that. He just wants stuff accomplished. Trump speaks on North Korea, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi. So anyway, he said it was, we already read about him handling it. Let's see. And then he said about Schumer and Pelosi, they decided not to show up. They've been all talk. There's been no action. And now it's even worse. Now it's not even talk, he said. So anyway, things are such a mess. So much more with Trump, more than they've ever been. Let's see. Even before court victory, Trump's pick to lead consumer watchdog began reshaping the agency. Federal judge on Tuesday refused to block President Trump's pick to be the temporary leader of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, denying a request by high-ranking agency employee that she be put in charge instead. In turning down Leandra English's request for a temporary restraining order, U.S. District Judge Timothy J. Kelly acknowledged that the case raised constitutional questions, but he ruled that the White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney can remain acting CFPB director. Former CFPB litigation counsel Deepak Gupta, representing English, said they would weigh their options to resolve an issue they say has left the 6-year-old agency and its 1,600 employees in legal limbo. There needs to be an answer. There needs to be a final answer. There needs to be a resolution of this cloud of impropriety hanging over the Bureau, Gupta told reporters after the hearing. The Trump administration applauded the decision and said the ruling supports its contention that Mulvaney is the rightful acting director. Okay, if you want to read more, you can go ahead. I'm going to go on to the Graham story. Graham, U.S. headed to war if things don't change with North Korea. Senator Lindsey Graham on Tuesday warned that the U.S. could be hurtling towards a war with North Korea if things don't change after the country's latest weapons test. Graham, an outspoken defense hawk, warmonger, told CNN during an interview that he believes every test puts them closer to a military conflict. We're headed toward a war if things don't change, he told CNN's Wolf Blitzer. Pentagon officials announced Tuesday they believe that Pyongyang had launched a single intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM, earlier in the day, its first in over 2 months. The move prompted President Donald Trump, while addressing reporters at the White House, to say the weapons test is a situation that we will handle. Graham, a South Carolina Republican and member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, said he hopes that North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un will de-escalate tensions on the Korean Peninsula, found that Trump will not stand by as the country sought to develop its nuclear arsenal. And it goes on, and you can read that yourself. Related, and that was a Politico story. Related is people for sale where lives are auctioned for $400. Basically, Tripoli, Libya, CNN, 800. Says the auctioneer, 900, 1,000, 1,100. Sold for 1,200 Libyan dinars, the equivalent of $800. Not a used car, a piece of land, or an item of furniture, not merchandise at all, but two human beings. One of the unidentified men being sold in the grainy cell phone video obtained by CNN is Nigerian. He appears to be in his 20s and is wearing a pale shirt and sweatpants. He has been offered up for sale as one of a group of big, strong boys for farm work, according to the auctioneer, who remains off camera. Only his hand resting proprietorily on the man's shoulder is visible in the brief clip. After seeing the footage of the slave auction, CNN worked to verify its authenticity and traveled to Libya to investigate further. Carrying concealed cameras into a property outside the capital of Tripoli last month, we witnessed a dozen people go under the hammer in the space of 6 or 7 minutes. Does anybody need a digger? This is a digger, a big, strong man. He'll dig. The salesman dressed in camouflage gear says, "What am I bid? What am I bid?" Buyers raise their hands as the prices rises, 500, 550, 600, 650. Within minutes, it's all over, and the men, utterly resigned to their fate, are being handed over to their new masters. After the auction, we met 2 of the men who had been sold. They were so traumatized by what they'd been through that they could not speak, and so scared that they were suspicious of everyone they met. And there's a map with the slave auctions that take place in Libya. There's a lot of slavery going on in the world. There's more people in slavery than in all of history, I believe it is, or maybe not all of history. Maybe than we're enslaved in the African slave trade back when when the U.S. was started and Europe had slaves as well. More now in slavery than then, and I just hope we can work. Organizations and groups can work with local authorities wherever this is going on to stop it, even though some of them are probably bought and sold themselves. Let's see, more of that. People for auction. Same story. All right. That looks like all the news stories. Oh yeah, I forgot. I was going to read what Lindsey Graham said. You've got to understand why most Republicans don't trust CNN. Sorry, my tabs kind of got out of order there. This is a story by the Washington Examiner by Diana Stancy Correll. Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican, South Carolina, defended President Trump's tweets from over the weekend that called CNN International a major source of fake news and explained why many Republicans distrust CNN's reporting. CNN anchor Wolf Blitzer pressed Graham on Tuesday about whether he was concerned about Libyan media questioning the credibility of a CNN report on Libyan slave auctions after seeing Trump's tweet. Well, I think the president feels like that CNN and every other major news outlet in this country is just unfair to the point of being over the top unfair, Graham said in response. I think there's some truth to that, but you're a good news organization. Graham then noted that the reporting on the Libyan slave auctions was well done and said he hoped Trump knew the report was real. Okay, now I see why they have the slave auction stories. It's part of the bigger story. But you've got to understand too that if you're President Trump, you can't turn on CNN or any other news network in the country without somebody beating the hell out of him, Graham said. And I guess that wears on him. But that's the nature of a free press, Blitzer said. That's our responsibility to report the news honestly and fairly and not just to do whatever a president or any other world leader says wants. See, I agree with that statement from Blitzer, if that was what they actually did. But that's not what CNN does. That's not what MSNBC does. That's not what Fox News does. None of them are fair. A lot of them try to push certain stories to the top so they become the priority of the citizens, and the citizens are, they start calling their congressman, we got, and there's certain stories that they're pushing, certain narratives that they're pushing. They either want war with a certain country, they don't want war with a certain country, they want a certain president focused on about, say Russia or with Obama Fast and Furious. And I'm not saying these stories aren't necessarily true, but they have an agenda. A lot of them are, depending on the news network, are either staunch liberals or staunch conservatives, and their agenda is to help their guy and hurt the other guy. That's not what press is supposed to be. So it's definitely unfair when they go overboard on Trump. And I think Trump has plenty to be attacked on, and so did Obama. But Obama, they covered up Obama stuff because they agreed with a lot of Obama stuff. That's the problem. They don't agree with Trump stuff, so they go after him. So that's just a farce. Either Blitzer is totally blind to that, and he's not really, and he thinks he's doing that. He thinks he's being fair, or thinks he's nature of the free press, report news honestly and fairly. He thinks he's doing that, but he's not. But they aren't on Fox either. So anyway, I'm not suggesting that you report the news in a way that you think is unfair, but let's be honest about this. MSNBC and CNN is just 24 hours a day that Trump did something wrong and stupid, and also good news reporting on Fox. He's always right. So the bottom line is you've got to understand why most Republicans don't trust CNN. President Trump frequently attacks CNN and took to Twitter on Saturday to attack CNN internationally and specifically. And here's a tweet. Excuse me. Fox News is much more important in the United States than CNN, but outside of the U.S., CNN International is still a major source of fake news, and they represent our nation to the world very poorly, Trump tweeted. The outside world does not see the truth from them. Trump also tweeted Monday that the networks and CNN should have a contest to determine which outlet is the most dishonest in their coverage of him, he said. The winner would receive a fake news trophy. So anyway, that's the story there. And again, it's basically the CNN. There's the tweet from Twitter. And we talked about Graham talking about the war. And like I said, CNN does it, MSNBC does it, Fox does it the most, but they drum up, they beat the war drums. They try to get all this, they try to get it like a momentum. So it just picks up and picks up and picks up and picks up. They're corporate, they're crony corporatists that have interest in the military industrial complex, and all sorts of interests that when war is going on in certain countries, it makes them money. It makes their buddies money. So it's not a conspiracy theory. It's just a fact. Think about it. If you have vested interests in something, you're going to want your vested interest to work. And somebody said, "Oh, enough to kill." Yeah, there are people that greedy, and there have been all throughout history. So don't pretend that that's a conspiracy theory to think that certain corporate heads and certain government officials. See, the government officials and the crony capitalists work together because they're symbiote. They have a symbiotic relationship. They feed off each other. They give each other money. They give each other power. So they basically they want war. Well, anyway, enough of that. You've been watching Libertas Press YouTube channel. I'm Kirby Harris. That was the news with a little of my commentary for November 28th, 2017, where we are reporting the truth and common sense opinion. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed everything. And I want to say God bless and enjoy your day.